Welcome to Civilian Carry Radio, proud member of the Firearms Radio Network. This show is brought to you by our sponsor tonight, Big Tex Outdoors. Big Tex Outdoors' main focus is high-quality tactical EDC gear. They offer 100% risk-free shopping. That means if you change your mind for any reason, they'll refund the full purchase price, shipping cost, and pay for the return shipping. So total risk-free shopping, folks. On top of that, most of their orders ship in 24 hours, and some of their items ship for as little as $1.99. They're an FFL3 Class 3 SOT, and so they sell suppressors, SBR, and other NFA items. Check out their website, Big Tex Outdoors. Use the code CC Radio for a 15% discount at checkout. And remember, folks, risk-free shopping. Our goal and focus of this podcast is to spread our message to everyday people, the importance of the Second Amendment, firearm safety, education, training, and mindset. Remember, you and only you are responsible for the safety and protection of yourself and your loved ones. Our mission statement: gun ownership is your right, safety and education are your responsibility. We have 3 rules on our podcast, folks. 1 is no cussing, 2 is no drinking, 3 is no politics, because gun rights and the right to self-protection is a God-given human right. I'm your host and producer, Baraka James, along with my co-host this evening, Alan Sams. Good evening, Alan. How are you, brother?
Great. How's it going?
Doing well. Folks, Tatiana could not make it tonight. She had a family commitment, but she sends her love, and she will be watching and chiming in later. So if you have any comments for her, just feel free. She is also the director of training at a Gun and a Girls Women's Shooting League at www.agunandagirl.org. So I'd like to take the time to introduce our very 3 guest co-hosts tonight, starting off first with Mr. Lee Weems, LEO, Chief Deputy and owner of First Person Safety. Good evening, Lee. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming. We also have Mr. DB, aka Daryl Bulkey of Hardwired Tactical and DB Shooting Adventures. We have both links to Lee's bio as well as Daryl's here in the show notes. Good evening, DB. How are you, brother?
Good. How are you?
You're doing well. Thank you to have here and your wonderful beard. Also, we have Mr. Ashton Gray, U.S. Navy veteran, owner of 360 Performing Shooter. We have also Ashton's bio here in the show notes. Good evening, Ashton. How are you?
If I was doing any better, I could sell franchises.
Love it. We are listener-funded radio, folks. You, the listeners, viewers, make this program possible. You can contribute to the show via Patreon for as little as $1 per episode, or as much as you like by going to www.patreon.com/CC Radio or clicking the link here in our show notes. A huge shout out to our $10 Patreon pledges, Mark B. and Young Pei Chang. Our $5 Patreon pledges, Christopher D., Rob J., CJ, James W., Russ A., Ira S., Rob C., Michael G., Eric B., Mark E., ATI Guns, Pat B., John W., On-Site Firearms Training, Scott D., Kirk C., David Y., FPF Training, and William T. We want to thank all of you who are currently pledging through Patreon, your support to continue and help us educate people on the importance of the Second Amendment, firearms training, mindset, and proper training. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts, guests, and do not reflect the official policy of the Firearms Radio Network and or Civilian Carry Radio and or their employees. Viewers' discretion is advised, especially on live shows. So, folks, this past Saturday, February 1st, we celebrated our 3rd anniversary on the air and wanted to say a huge thank you from all of us here at Civilian Carry Radio. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve and deliver to you all the valuable and life-saving information. A huge thank you to all of our guest co-host, and a huge thank you to you people in our live chat and our community, our listeners and viewers. I thank Alan and Tatiana for your time, dedication, hard work, and believing in what we do. Much love to you both. Folks, we greatly appreciate all of your continued support, love, and encouragement. Thank you all. Alan, did you have anything you want to add to that, brother?
No, just reiterate the same thing. It's our guests have been awesome. A lot of them have become friends, and the people that participate every week in the chat. We've got some guys that comment on every show, take the time out to do that. We really appreciate it. Barack and I have, just a huge amount of fun just interacting with the people we have as guests, but all the feedback from you folks out there that are listening really make it that much better and much more worthwhile to do. So we really appreciate it.
Well said, Alan. And regarding that specifically, we have a few emails from this past week after last show and our third anniversary that passed. First is from Erica Maw. She said, Barack, I can't thank you enough for putting me in touch with Ben DeWalt and OFT. Where can I leave an after action report on defensive pistol class taught by Ben this past Super Bowl Sunday? Thank you in advance. Yours truly, Erica. Erica, I will get in touch with Ben and let you know, and I'll answer that email after I speak with him. 2 is from Young Pei Chang. He said, happy 3rd CC anniversary. Just sending an email to you, Alan, and Tatiana to tell you guys great work. Keep it up. We finished a one-day TACMED EDC here in Arizona with Mr. Causey. His first class is in our great state. And while I could not make it to the dinner that night, I'm glad to have seen some familiar faces and some new. After class was over, we looked over some of our kits and constructive criticism while chatting about his last appearance on the show while juggling a dog and a little one. A nice start for a new month. Hope you guys are great. It should be warm a bit soon. At least it's kind of over here. We're back up in the 50s this morning. Thanks, Young. Thank you, Young. We appreciate all of your support, your time, and always joining us and treating us and giving us great feedback. 3rd is from Michael Treat. Wanted to let you know that one of the show's listeners came down to the Twin Cities from Fargo, North Dakota today to take a force-on-force class with QSI, and he had heard about us on the show. So he wanted to let us know that. Thank you so much. And Lee,
awesome.
I had a class this Saturday and had a student show up to take the class because he had heard some of the appearances from here on the radio show, and he brought his father along with him. So I had 2 students in class as a direct result of CCR, as he called it, and another student in the class who is a prolific student that comes a lot of my stuff, a lot of Brian Hill's stuff, other trainers, and everybody that comes through that we host. And he was telling me that he's making his decisions on what classes to take at TACCon based on appearances of the presenters that have been here on the show. And he specifically mentioned John Hearn as one of those.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lee. Number 5 comes from Tonya Poo. Thank you for last week's show. My 17-year-old daughter, who will be going to college soon, tuned in with me, and as a result is now seeking out instruction in self-defense in both hand-to-hand and with firearms. It is our pleasure, Tonya. We appreciate that you took the time to watch that with your daughter, and we hope we can provide anything we can do to help steer you guys in the right direction. We appreciate you investing in your daughter's safety and your own. Thank you so much. Number 6 is from Robin Sandoval. She's executive director at A Girl and a Gun, and she wrote a wrote-up from last week's show, introducing a firearm to women's crisis. The link is there. Please check that out. And the last one is a link from me, a security mindset, personal safety when going out and meeting someone new. I apologize, folks. Last week, I did not make it public. It is now available. So if you went last week, you couldn't see it. It is now public to see. Now, without further ado, we have tonight's guest. We welcome back Mr. Tom Gibbons, owner of Rangemaster and retired LEO, who first appeared on our 20th show streamed live on June 5th, 2017. We have the link here in our notes. And without, I pass it to Mr. Lee Weems for his bio.
All right. Well, folks, if you don't know Tom Gibbons, you're about to get a very hour and a half long introduction to him. He had a 25-year law enforcement and security career. He's been teaching firearms professionally for over 40 years now. He's been joined by his wife, Lynn, in that avocation. I'm not going to read through every class that he's got in his bio, but he's graduated from just about every big school there is out there, and is one of the true primary sources of firearms training information. He ran the Rangemaster training facility at Memphis for 18 years. Now he's a 100% traveling on the road instructor. But perhaps his greatest accomplishment and greatest gift to the firearms world is he is who gave us all Tiffany Johnson. Tiffany walked into Rangemaster, I don't know how many years ago it was. All the places she could have walked into, she walked into Rangemaster and met Tom Gibbons. And now we have Tiffany. And I hope Tiffany is tearing up wherever she is listening right now.
My question is it as true as I think? Did the heavens part? Were beams of light coming down? And did you see little cherubs descending with her along next to her, bringing her down and gently setting her on the ground? I just want to know.
Oh, yes. And it's hard to believe that was over 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm shocked every time I think about that. She was just a baby, fresh out of law school.
Wow.
Alan?
Alrighty. So, we've already hit a little bit on Rangemaster. Of course, everybody on the panel, but a lot of the listeners and people out there know theoretically, in the most realistic sense, what range master is. But I was really wondering how you would describe range master. Like, what does it really mean to you, and what's it all about? I mean, what do you see for it? I mean, where's it going? You obviously have a vision for this thing. So we really want to hear you really go into depth on what range master is.
Okay. Well, I started training on a real part-time basis in 1975. I was just appalled. I'd been in law enforcement a few years already at that point, and I was just appalled at the level of training that was available, either in academy or in the private sector. It sucked big time, and I wanted to try to correct that. So I started trying to offer a better alternative to that. In 1996, became a full-time trainer and opened the Range Master facility in Memphis, which, as Lee mentioned, ran for 18 years. And just to try to have a source of good, solid information for people instead of the usual nonsense that was available. And what I've shifted the last few years, my emphasis has been on trying to train the next generation of trainers, the next generation of instructors, try to better prepare them to kind of carry the torch, you might say, in the next decade.
So, obviously, hundreds of law enforcement officers came before you and were with you. I guess my question is, why are some people fine with, going through these programs the way they are? And then what made you say, you know what, this isn't right? I mean, this isn't, most of the time you're taught something and you're like, okay, that's right. But what made you look at it and say, there's got to be something better? And if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I guess one is, why did you notice it? What made you notice it when others didn't? And what made you think that, you know what, I guess I'm the guy that's going to do this? What made you think that you had that in you and you could do it?
Well, that's kind of hard to quantify. I had been reading voraciously about firearms and firearms training, the history of firearms use in this country since I was early teenager. Memphis, it's gone now, I'm sure. Memphis at one time had a technical library in the public library system, and they considered shooting a technical skill, which it is. And so they're actually quite a collection of the older books. A lot of people today don't realize that a lot of the professional gunmen of the 1920s, 1930s, people who had an awful lot of experience in gunfighting, wrote books, and they were available. And I had already read all of those long before I got out of high school. People like Askins, McGivern, history of people like Hamer, others, quite a few, Hatcher, many others. So I had a pretty good idea what might be involved. And then when I got my initial training, I just realized that these people aren't preparing the trainees to go out and do anything realistic with it. We're just checking a bureaucratic box, basically, which is what, unfortunately, most institutional firearms training comes down to. If they teach you to do anything, is to pass the qualification course, which is not preparing you to do much out in the real world. And I guess the word would be, it offended me that we're sending young people out to do a job without any preparation whatsoever that would be relevant to the job. I had the good fortune of meeting Jeff Cooper pretty early in my career. We started corresponding while I was still in high school, actually.
Oh, wow.
He was my mentor, and got the gun sight pretty early in its career, like about a year after it opened, and got to see what actual effective training looked like. And that just made it even worse. They just really fired me up to say, somebody's got to carry this back to my side of the country. Gun sight's a long way from Memphis and the rest of the South, which has got a long tradition of really low-end training, if any training at all. Not necessarily Memphis, the Southeast. If you'll notice, every year, if you look at the officers killed summaries, more officers are killed in the Southeast than in the other three regions of the country put together. And
Wow.
Part of that is just a total lack of training. In a lot of states in the Southeast, you can be commissioned as a police officer for up to a year before getting any training. And like one year, probably about 1980, I was attending a Caliber Press street survival seminar, which I did a number of times on my own dime. But the table in front of me had 4 or 5 officers from Mississippi, and I could overhear their conversation. And they had all cycled through the same half dozen police departments a year at a time. They'd worked for this one for a year, and that one for a year, and that one for a year. And they had been on the street for 6 or 7 years, and they had no formal training at all, except what they got going themselves to something like the street survival seminar. And they hadn't set foot in an academy, and they just moved at the end of each year to a different agency. And in the Southeast, unfortunately, that's fairly common. So I just wanted to provide an opportunity for these people to get some kind of training that was relevant, useful, and might actually be of some value to them if they found themselves in a bad spot.
Awesome.
Lee?
All right, Tom, you touched on a couple of things in that last little bit that I want to expand on here. One, you talked about the books, the Charles Askins and those guys in the early days of Gunsight, and that you were also wanting to prepare the next generation of instructors. I want you to expand on why knowing the background and the history and the evolution of firearms and training is important for an instructor, and then kind of parlay that into a lifelong learner continuing to seek out educational opportunity. Then we have I know you and I've already discussed a follow-up to that.
Yeah. I think it's critically important to know how we got where we are, which is something that very few modern trainers seem to have any grasp of whatsoever. If it happened more than 2 years ago and it's not on Instagram or YouTube, they're completely unaware of it, which is sad. As I mentioned, in the 1920s and 30s, if you ask a typical person who knows nothing about this, what period in American history had the most non-military people being paid to shoot other people, they tend to think of the so-called Wild West. You and I know the Wild West in its movie version never actually existed. The bulk of gunfighting in this country was done in the 1920s, 1930s, which people ask me all the time, why is that? It's really not one thing. It never is one thing when we have all these huge spikes in violent crime. It's a confluence of several factors. In the 1920s and 30s, you had the Great Depression. You had the first federal narcotics laws about 1920. You had Prohibition, which created organized crime. It also created huge smuggling problems on the southwestern border, which a number of the guys that wrote books about their experiences were in the Border Patrol in the El Paso and Arizona areas during that time frame. But those things were all contributory, but I think the major factor was the automobile. Automobiles up until the 1920s were extremely rare. They were extremely expensive. Only the very rich had them. And when Ford produced a way to mass produce cars, brought the price down, you could buy a new car in 1924 for $550. That was a lot of money in 1924. But somebody with a job could get a bank loan and buy a car for the first time. And all of a sudden, American society became mobile. Prior to that, people weren't born in hospitals. They were born at home. And the typical American lived his entire life from birth to death within a 3-mile radius of the house he was born in. With the sudden proliferation of automobiles, American society suddenly became mobile, and you could go to a different town or even a different state, commit crimes, and come back home the same day, which you couldn't do before that. And I think that had more of an impact on the amount of violent crime that occurred in the 20s and 30s than those other factors did, actually. But anyway, when you put all of those together, we had an awful lot of violent crime, and the world was a lot simpler then. If you shot at a cop, you were pretty much expected you were going to get shot back at. And so a lot of these guys were in a lot of shootings, learned a lot about personal combat with firearms, and wrote books about it. The information's there. I run into trainers all the time today, never heard of any of the people I've mentioned that way, and not only haven't read their work, they're not even aware of them. So that's one thing I like to try to correct. We've done an instructor development course now for over 20 years, trying to make a reasonably competent basic instructor that can go teach the permit type classes and the entry level classes that are so important, because that's the only training most people are going to get. Then 10, 12 years ago, we started doing an advanced instructor course for people that had graduated from the first one. Last year, we started offering a master firearms instructor development course for people that have been through the first 2. Another 3 days of trainings, makes 8 total. But one of the things I do in that is it's a 4-hour block on the development and history of modern firearms training, 1920 when it started to 2020,
Awesome.
100 years of progress. And we go back and look at the early pioneers, the activity, the early FBI firearms training unit, for instance, was pivotal in setting up what we think of as modern firearms training. But everybody's forgotten about most of the key players in that. People like Ballman, Walsh, a typical person today has no idea who you're talking about. And so I think that's important enough that I devote half a day of the 3-day masterclass to that one topic, to give instructors some idea of history, development, how we got where we are. One of the things you see if you've been around as long as I have, I've been training now for 50 years, is all this crap goes around about a 15-year cycle. And so I'm about the 3rd time around now. And we have to reinvent everything every 15 or 20 years. It seems like we start all over again, which is just a silly waste of time and resources. So I just, one of my primary goals today is to try to educate young trainers about how we got where we are and not have to continually reinvent the wheel.
That is awesome. So real quick, we have a couple of live chat questions before I pass the mic over to DB for his input. The first one, I'll take the first one. And let me see. It is from Ryan McCann, Tom. He says, how common are arm's length gunfights in civil defensive context? Arm length or closer, I mean.
Actually, from what I've seen, they're not terribly common. If you get your head up, get your eyes open, see what's going on around you. We've had 67 student-involved shootings where I have a good debrief where they've come back to the school and reported in. And none of them start out. The key word in armed robbery is armed, okay? And the whole purpose of the knife or the gun is to terrorize you into compliance, then close the distance and take whatever it is they want from you. Armed robberies don't start as a physical assault and then back up and pull a gun. They pull the gun to initiate the robbery. So in my experience, both as an investigator, as a personal participant, and in looking at the student incidents, it's just not that common. Now, arms length problems are extremely common for the police, which is a completely different world. Whether you're arresting somebody for DWI or first degree murder makes no difference. At some point, you have to put your hands on him. We tried for decades to find some way to put handcuffs on people by telekinesis, but it doesn't work. We have to put our meat hooks on them at some point. And to put your meat hooks on them, you got to be within what? Arm's length. So in law enforcement, we see an awful lot of those. If you work undercover narcotics, you're going to be making hand-to-hand exchanges with criminals. Unfortunately, sometimes they're not there to make an exchange with you, they're there to rip you off. So those start at arm's length. If you're a bouncer in a bar, those problems start at arm's length. If you're a patrolman, every time you arrest somebody, that starts at arm's length. So if you look at those specific occupations, then you find a fair number of arm's length problems. There are specific to those occupations. Someone, as I said, who wants to stick you up is not going to come up and grab you by the collar and then back up and pull a gun on you. They're going to pull a gun, demand the stuff. That's typically from 2 or 3 steps away.
Ashton, can you grab Mike Green's in the comments, please? And then we'll pass the mic to DB after that.
Yeah, got
That's
it.
the last one right now.
So, Tom, Mike asked, he mentions that he's a huge fan of yours, and he's taken a number of your courses. His question is, he'd like to know what you consider to be the highlight of your career.
That's a tough question.
Training Mike Green?
And in turn, he trains green ops.
Yeah, Mike's a good man, and he does a really good job. I don't know. That's a tough one. I really don't. I personally don't think I do a whole lot. I just kind of steer things. So I'm not sure that I have any major accomplishment that I'd want to point out.
Okay, DB, you're up, brother.
Okay, because that's typical me, and I got a complicated question. But Tom is the only person who gets excited about my collection of pre-World War II revolvers from gunfighters. So, So I was at SHOT Show for the first time in my life, and this guy walking around was a participant, just talking to old friends in the industry and stuff. And I had a question, and knowing Tom was coming on tonight, I think he's one of the best people to answer this and discuss it. So when Tom started out in the history of kind of modern firearm training, which sort of in the last 40, 50 years, all of the trainers of Tom's era and the beginning of my era to talk to other trainers was a correspondence, usually by letters. Maybe you could get a personal phone call, but most people are busy doing stuff, and landline phones and time changes. So a lot of stuff was done on letter writing and correspondence. Most of our education through people we were dealing with was through print media. Gun magazines were huge. I moved here to Texas and I threw away literally an entire trash bin of gun magazines. I had like all of them. I am from kind of the era where I became a sort of seasoned firearms instructor in the beginning of the internet, which sort of allowed people of my generation to correspond digitally for the first time. And a lot of the trainers were all similar to myself, Tom Chapman, and many were in the violence worker industry with pretty much extensive experience in violence, and would exchange information pretty hardcore because we had access across the country. That's now transitioned. That the correspondence print media thing is kind of gone. The original digital thing amongst trainers has sort of been surpassed. Gun magazines have almost gone away to, gun magazines are now firearms lifestyle publication. And almost everything now is completely digital internet. How much do you think we've gained or lost from this transition? Because like I said, the original guys, you had to be pretty seasoned in the violence industry to be in this. Even the writers who didn't used to have to get a hobby cop job to have any level of distinction. And then now it's almost, you got to be better at digital than violence. What are your thoughts, Tom, on the trend of the industry and maybe how it's adapting to leaving a seasoned experienced violence worker lifestyle trainers to new, younger, digitally, educated trainers, and where do you think that's going, and what are your thoughts on it, just philosophically?
That'll take a while.
But you're just the man to do it because you've been in all of the generations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I first started corresponding with Jeff Cooper, it was by letter, and I'd send him a typewritten letter, and a week later I'd get a typewritten response back in great detail. He was very generous with his time. But prior to that, I think one of the things that was the central hub were the big matches. People like to say that competition will get you killed in the streets, but if you'll think about it, the most prolific gunmen in the 20s and 30s were also national level bullseye competitors, and they would get together at state, regional, and national bullseye matches, and that was the one time they could get together and talk in person, face to face, have a few drinks and share experiences and whatnot. Askins was the 3-time national bullseye champion. Harlan Carter was a national champion. Bill Jordan was a highly ranked bullseye shooter, and on and on. And that was one of their primary methods of communication, was getting together at Camp Perry every year and at the various big matches in the Southwest. The Texas State Championship, the Oklahoma State Championship were a couple of the biggies. And that was how they communicated in person and shared information. Later on, as you said, gun magazines were a big deal. When I was a teenager in the 50s and 60s, there were probably 20 major gun publications, quite a few of them, most of which have gone out of business in the last 10 years. And they were a primary source of information for most people. below the level of the top guys that we just mentioned. Matches still were a major meeting point for these people. If you wanted to talk to the law enforcement guys, you went to the PPC matches, including the national championships, which for many years were either in Illinois and then later in Mississippi before they moved to New Mexico and now back to Mississippi. You got to see just about everybody in the country there, and they were from all the big agencies that actually did train, like the Border Patrol and Secret Service and whatnot, all had big teams at that event. So that was one way to see the other people in that arena. And private sector trainers tended to get together at things like the Second Chance Shoot in Michigan, and it gave them opportunity to do some face-to-face communication. One of the primary reasons that I host the tactical conference every year, this year is I think the 22nd year for that, is to serve that same function, so that we have now not just shooters but multidisciplinary trainers from hand-to-hand, blade, legal issues, medical issues, as well as shooting. Give them an opportunity to come together once a year. And as Skip Gokenauer called it, cross-pollinate. We give each other ideas, discuss each other's ideas, give each other input. A lot of us are working on parallel tracks on the same things, and allow us to compare notes and see how things are progressing. So I think events like that, not just the tactical conference, but other events like it, have sprung up over the last few years. And I think that's critically important. It's one of the few opportunities for us to get together face-to-face. The NRA annual meeting for many years was one of the chief ways for people to get together. I used to go to it, for instance, and see people like Bill Jordan and Jeff Cooper, Louis Auerbach and whatnot were always at the NRA meeting, so it gave me an opportunity to have some FaceTime with them. SHOT is really more of a dealer-oriented event. Although some trainers do show up there, but they're usually really busy helping hawk products for people that they represent. So it's not so much an opportunity for communication like the NRA annual meeting used to be. And now the tactical conference is. At the tactical conference coming up in March, we'll have almost 40 trainers from literally all over the country, from all those different disciplines. And as you know, one of the things we do is have a trainer just for the dinners, a dinner just for the trainers, so that they can get together in a private setting with each other and share these ideas and catch up on what each other are doing and just communicate in a more productive way than little snippets on the internet. To your last point, I think it's unfortunate that there are people in the business now who are famous for being famous, I guess would be the way to put it, rather than having a real background. The number of followers you have on Instagram does not indicate any sort of competency as a trainer. It means you got a lot of followers on Instagram.
Amen. Go ahead, Ashton. You had Erica's question. You're on mute, brother.
Yeah, I had to fix it. So, Tom, Erica has a question, and it dovetails in with something that I was going to ask too, so I'll kind of put them together. Her question is, how much has your instructor curriculum evolved over the years? And amplifying that, when do you decide to change your doctrine, and when do you decide to dig your heels in and say, no, I don't like this new thing? What kind of process do you go through to decide what's gonna come in and what's gonna stay out?
Well, the evolutionary process is constant. We don't look at it every 5 years and say we need to update this. That's an ongoing, constant thing. One of the things I try to do is take training from other organizations on a continual basis. In the last year, I've trained with Farnham, Gabe White, Ernest Langdon, and next week I'll be taking a class with Dave Spalding, and that's just all in the last year.
Nice.
And the purpose of that is to try to keep up with what's evolved. Gabe, for instance, may be doing something I'm completely unaware of until I take a class from him. Spalding, I've known for years. I don't expect any earth-shattering revelations, but I'll pick up nuance of how to explain this or how to explain that or how to demonstrate this or that. And when I find a better way to do something, it immediately goes into the curriculum. We're not one of the primary advantages of the private sector over the institutional schools is that it doesn't take 5 years of committee work to change something with a stroke of a pen. I can say, well, that's out and this is in. because it's my program. So I come home and tap the keyboard a few times and something's changed in the curriculum. So that's an ongoing thing. I think if you took our instructor course 10 years ago and you took it tomorrow, you'd see a radically different product.
Yeah, I can vouch for that, Tom. I took the instructor program 10 years ago, and when I was in Florida with you last year doing the instructor development program, it had evolved quite a bit.
The class from hell.
we had some challenges, but we worked through them, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm glad you were there. Might have been a shooting at other than paper targets had you not been there.
It was an honor.
Alan?
So we've got David at Firearms Training Hub. He wants to know from a historical perspective, what are your thoughts about modern shooters competing in bullseye precision competition versus action pistol? And I'm assuming that means from the defensive-minded.
Bullseye has limited utility for us, but it does have some important things for us. Bullseye forces you, whether you want to or not, forces you to really focus on the fundamentals. You have to pay attention. You've got to have some visual patience. You've got to learn to work a trigger correctly. A lot of my personal practice, in fact, darn near all of it, is done on some form of bullseye type target. Although I'm not standing on my hind legs shooting with one hand at the 10 range slow fire, I'm using that type of target a lot because it forces you to really pay attention to fundamentals and shoot well. I think that carries over in field performance. I've shot a lot of game with a handgun, and I think being able to precisely place a bullet exactly where you want it on a moving, unpredictable creature comes from being able to do that on a bullseye over and over and over and over again. So I think it does have some utility from that standpoint. Obviously, gun games in which you move, you draw from a holster, you have to reload rapidly, you have to rest more than one target rapidly. Obviously, they have more applicability than the old style bullseye shooting. But I still think doing some precision type work on bullseye type targets is part of an important part of your development as a shooter.
And I think we kind of know how you feel about that kind of shooting, because if I'm not mistaken, hopefully I don't embarrass myself here, but my IDPA number is like A640238. What is yours?
Rookie numbers. A00008.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was
That's
hoping
amazing.
I was hoping I recalled that correctly. I think that's freaking crazy. That's awesome. But so to my question, so Barack and I have trained with a lot of different trainers, and it's kind of interesting. There's certain kinds of trainers, they draw a certain kind of dress almost, you know what I mean? And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What I noticed was when we trained with you is that Barack and I have always dressed whenever we go to in any type of training, whatever we wear all the time. So I always, we're normally in the summertime. Summertime, I wear t-shirt, shorts, and work boots most of the time. What I noticed when we went to, I want to say Barack, maybe it was the first class we'd ever been in before that had no Arc'teryx pants, no, tactical ninja clothes, none of that stuff. Everybody everybody looked like they were just
Street clothes.
Street clothes. What do you feel that says about Rangemaster, the type of training that you provide, and the type of people that find themselves seeking out Rangemaster?
Yeah, a friend of mine calls the typical garb that you're talking about range costume, and that's
very accurate.
Pretty apt. Yeah, it's pretty apt description of it. We encourage people, in the memos we send out prior to class to tell people what to bring and when to show up and what to expect. We point out in there that you should dress as you dress in your daily routine, carrying your pistol concealed as you would in your daily routine, and work out of your everyday carry gear, and which includes the clothing you wear. I think it's just silly to go to class dressed one way and wear the gun 99.99% of the time some other way. The whole idea of training is repetitive programming, and you can't do that if you're wearing completely different gear. When I lived in Tennessee, my normal everyday dress was a tucked-in polo shirt and a jacket, or a real lightweight tropic vest from Concealed Carry Clothiers back in those days. Now that I lived in Florida now for about 4 years, my everyday is a pair of khakis and a fishing shirt or Hawaiian shirt, and that's what I show up in at the range. When I demo, it's from underneath the fishing shirt, a pair of khakis with my IWB holster that I wear every single day. I don't change a thing. The only thing I change when I go to class is I have a training pistol and a carry pistol that are identical. And I take the carry pistol off, put the training pistol on, just simply to keep from getting wear and tear on my carry gun. But if I set the two of them on the table, you wouldn't be able to tell me which are which. I have to look at them pretty closely to tell you which is which. And that's the only concession I make, that in my training magazines, so I don't beat to death my carry magazines. But as far as the holster, mag pouches, belt, clothing, it's the same thing I wear when I'm not on the range. And I think that's important. And I think the kind of students that come to our training get that. You know, we point out in the pre-class memo that a battle belt with a thigh rig is okay if that's what you wear to work every day. If it's not what you wear to work every day, then don't bring it. And students buy into that. We have, as you said, you saw at the class there in Virginia, guys with a button-up shirt out over the gear, or a polo shirt out over the gear, or in my case, a fishing shirt out over the gear. And that's the way we conduct ourselves. You know, when we go to dinner after class, we don't change clothes. We just go to dinner. And so we're already wearing the clothes that we're going to be in for the rest of the night. And I think it's important to work that way. If you find yourself in need of that gun when you get to dinner, it'd be nice that you've practiced with that setup.
Amen.
Definitely.
So, interestingly enough, whoever is behind the Justified Defensive Concepts, because there's like 8 of them, they actually literally read my mind, because I was like, we've got Tom, we've got DB, Lee, and Ashton. It would be remiss, and I would probably get hate mail, and my house would probably be burned on fire tomorrow morning if I didn't bring up shotguns with you on the panel tonight. So, Justified Concept says, does Tom feel that we are on the cusp of seeing defensive-minded citizens rediscovering the utility of the defensive shotgun? Does he think it will make a comeback in law enforcement? ?
And surprise, surprise, it's Tim Chandler asking that question.
Yeah, I know. I was just being facetious.
I already figured that out. I actually do see a resurgence in interest in the shotgun. There's so much noise right now about restricting or even banning AR-type rifles that I think a lot of people are looking at the shotgun as their primary home defense weapon rather than a carbine now. It's not a primary consideration in selecting a weapon, but there's a good bit of research, I can point you to it, that juries view ARs and shotguns completely differently, which might be something just put in the back of your mind. Again, not how I primarily choose a weapon, but something to be thoughtful about. In regards to law enforcement, in enlightened agencies, you have both in the vehicle. You have a rifle and a shotgun because they serve completely different functions. That's something a lot of people don't realize, though. Neither weapon is a do-all. They're niche weapons. If you're getting out of the car at night on a hold-up alarm at the liquor store, you take the shotgun. If you're making felony vehicle stops, you take the shotgun with running slugs in it. If you're going into the high school with 125-yard long corridors, you take the rifle. So if you have an enlightened agency, you have both right there in the vehicle because they don't serve the same function whatsoever. And in fact, I work with a number of agencies that do exactly that. They have both, provide training for both, and then the officer has the option of choosing the best weapon for the task at hand, which is the smart way to do things. Otherwise, you're trying to make the carbine fit the shotgun niche, and you're trying to make the shotgun fit the carbine niche if either is all you have, and neither one of them does it worth a damn doing that. They're both fairly specialized weapons. The shotgun is the hammer of God at close range. There's nothing better at putting down lightly clothed, unarmored bad men at 5 to 15 yards than a shotgun with buckshot. there's few things better at getting inside a car than a solid slug like a Brennick. And the shotgun just really sucks for engaging somebody at the other end of the playground or the other end of that second floor corridor in the high school building. The carbine shines at that. So I think if you're intelligent enough to look at your situation and say, okay, this is the most likely scenario for me, that I need this, but that scenario is plausible, I better have that as well, then that's a smart way to approach things. From the homeowner's perspective, I think you're going to see a lot more interest in the shotgun. It's kind of coming back around in another cycle, but there are very few people who understand the gun. You see all kinds of just garbage about use of the shotgun, even for people who are supposed to know better. And modifications, accessories, and ammunition are really key to using a shotgun correctly. And the manual of arms is radically different from that of a handgun or a carbine. It's nothing else we use operates the way a shotgun does. They're not loaded the same way. They're not reloaded the same way. The safeties operate differently. So if we don't learn to use the shotgun correctly, we don't tend to do very well with it. So I really like to see more people get into training to teach the shotgun, because I think there's going to be more of a demand for that. And right now, there are very few people qualified to do that.
Hey, Lee, before we go with your follow-up, let's go around. Let's go to DB. DB, you got to move your face a little closer. People were saying they couldn't hear you. That's why. So if you can move a little closer, and because I know you have brought it up in past shows, you've used a shotgun during duty, and please address that, and then we'll go right to Lee and then to Ashton on the shotgun.
Shotgun was my number one. I mean, that was, if I thought I was going to anything remotely bad, I always took the gauge, but I was also a gigantic minority doing that. All the guys I worked with knew if something good was going to happen, I was going to start with the gauge, and they didn't have to. Most officers were horribly undertrained. It was one of those things: close your eyes, pull the trigger, they'll all destroy everything in front of them, and they'll all be good. As far as I know, I am the only person at my agency who had ever hit anybody with a gun. The officer relative, because they didn't need to
Let me jump in there for a second, Daryl, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Even an agency as big as the Memphis Police Department, they fire 5 rounds of shotgun a year. 5 rounds a year. So what happens is they never get out of the car with the gun because they can't remember how to even get it into action. You can't fire 5 rounds through something that operates radically different from your other equipment, and 11 months later be expected to get it out under stress and remember what to do with it. So the bottom line is the gun's checked out, put in the patrol car, taken back out of the patrol car, and checked back in. And the reason nobody ever gets shot with it is because they never take it out of the car.
Yeah,
and they never take it out of the car because they have no idea what to do with it.
And they were usually so poorly set up for being out of the car. No slings, beat sight. You didn't know where the gun was sighted at.
Right.
The ammo was terrible. I mean, a lot of issues. What I started doing after my first shooting with a shotgun, actually after second one, is I started bringing my own barrel into work, which Honda Bang built me, and my own forend, which had a Surefire light. And I had a sling rig up, and I had it set up on a tractor sling, basically, under my uniform, so I could sling it. Once I started doing that, it became. I used them in the old configuration all the time, but then it became almost a appendage. One of my mentors, John Helms, and I'll rub this in Tom's face a little. I have Helms because I have. Helms was a huge shotgun guy as well. I mean, everybody complained at him at LAPD because he came out of a heavy division. John was like me, took a shotgun to everything. You go to Valley Division back in those days at LA, and you break the shotgun out in day shift on patrol. They lost their mind. Most places were the same. They didn't like seeing it. I just had the benefit of I worked in the middle of the night, so nobody cared. But I have cleared literally thousands upon thousands of rooms, buildings, vehicles, everything with a gauge because I liked it and I saw the need, but I also trained to do it. And it wasn't easy. I just ran into Rob Hott the other day, and Rob and I were laughing. Rob, until he came out to the West Coast, and saw me and my guys. He was telling his wife, because we never seen anything like the cops who could run a gun like that. We did because we used them. Certain units within LAPD were actually dodged on them. But very few police were really serious about them. They always hoped that, well, if you rack it, maybe the police will all give up. It didn't work that way. They just prepared for a fight. So there was very few people who were serious. And it kind of goes back to what I asked Tom earlier. If you hadn't been to gun sight, you probably weren't that serious about a shotgun. I mean, back coming out of the 70s, the serious shotgun guys, I mean, I trained with Bill Jeans, Howard By, they all came out of gun sight. All the LAPD guys came out of gun sight, brought it all back. Clint Smith, those guys. I mean, it was coming out of gun sight on developing how to run the gauge against people. And Tom's a historian like I am. I have some very secretive things I don't share with anybody on the old text with Hamer, with an interview with his wife. And Hamer didn't like the shotgun because he couldn't account for spread, which basically had said Hamer figured out it's a 10-yard and in gun. In buckshot of that era, it's a 10-yard and in gun. It was his room clearing gun. And everybody else, shotguns are too big to clear rooms. Well, no, that's what they're really, really good for. And I tell most people that my first choice in a handgun fight is a shotgun. Because I take shotguns to pistol fights. And you take rifles, the one you call 911 and make this something where it's in the mouth of that. Shotguns to me are how to dominate a pistol fight is with a 12-gauge shotgun. I think Tom would agree with me on that.
Absolutely.
Tom,
Go ahead, brother.
Oh, sorry.
To Tim's portion of that question about do we ever think we'll see the shotgun coming back to law enforcement, I don't think so. I think that ship has sailed, and it's got nothing whatsoever to do with the effectiveness of the platform. It goes just what Tom was saying, is people don't know how to use it. And if I take a group of people who have never been gun people and I get them to qualified, checking the box qualified on a state level qualification course with a handgun. Okay, how do you load a pistol? You put the magazine in the grip and you run the slide. How do you load a AR pattern carbine? You put the magazine in the mag well and you run the bolt. You unload them in a similar fashion. So all of that translates from platform to platform, but it doesn't translate over to shotgun. When I worked with an agency that we had shotguns that we had to swap on and off at shift, I found shotguns with the shells in the mag tube backwards and everything. It just, we're never going to see it again. And I was with an agency that adopted patrol rifles and was standing on the range. I ran the shotgun qualification portion of training that day. One of the other instructors stepped up to run the brand new, hey, we got carbines now, carbine portion of training. And I saw shotguns die in that agency that day. And they were gone within a week. The chief had ordered us to buy less lethal ammunition to put in the shotguns just because the patrol guys just weren't going to do it anymore. And I've got to tell a quick story on myself. Being a shotgun guy here recently, I heard sirens and all sorts of activity outside of my house, and I live in a jurisdiction other than where I work. And I sent a text to somebody there, hey, so what's going on? Like, we just had one crash near your house. The guy's running through the woods. And it was just one of those crazy things. I had put my shotgun somewhere else, and I turned around, and all I had was my AR handy. And I'm like, I'm the guy that preaches shotguns, and I'm going to have to field a home invader, and I'm standing here with a rifle, and I'm never going to hear the end of this from Chandler and Bolton. So I thought it was funny. Murphy told me not to tell the story out loud, but I thought it was funny. Not to admit it. Ashton.
Yeah, I think
Tom, you mentioned the basically.
Yeah, I think the one place where I'm seeing, and that's where I'm putting my push in the future, is actually teaching people to use their sporting shotgun for defense. I know that sounds weird, but once I started hanging out, my wife introduced me to the wing sports. She was not wing sport guy for a while, 8 years. Once I started that, I started to realize when we get out to these trap and skeet ranges, plays, and wing shooting, these are the generation and the people who are really good at manipulating and using the shotgun, and they just don't think about putting it into their defensive, home defense role. but they are the people, because the cops now are not sized correctly, backgrounded correctly, all the things you need to really dominate that gun, they just don't have in their backgrounds. Where the people who do are literally our hunters and our sport shooters, and I've had to develop new stuff on run sporting guns for defense. But particularly if you look at women out on a trapper skeet range, look at how the guns are set up. You look at their stocks; they look like some sort of alien appendage, but they fit them. And the whole key to the shotgun that makes them so dang effective is that if they're properly fitted, they sort of aim themselves. It's usually not that the spread is so good; it's that if you get that from the shoulder and the two guns and everything properly spread out, it puts the sights in your eye line. The whole thing with the wind sports is they really don't use sights. They're using their eye as a rear sight. Well, that gets pretty effective. If you can shoot little itty bitty flying birds, which I found out is pretty hard, all of a sudden slow moving human beings in close range becoming a much easier proposition with a properly fitted gun. And most of the sporting people have great guns. They're super reliable. They shoot them a lot. They handle them a lot. They're just not tactical as far as the handling goes. But I mean, for a home defense problem, it's a pretty good solution. And I'll be honest with you, in California, New York City, Chicago, and all those places, nobody cares about a camouflage that you hunt both of them.
Very well.
I have been traveling lately with a pair of Beretta 400 Extreme Pluses and Max 5 camo, and from a guy who traveled with 7 AR-15s most of the time and packed shotguns, I'm astounded at the difference of airport, hotels, people, everything else. It's like I don't have a gun. It's a golf club. Yeah. It's a wave of the future in a lot of places. Not all over America, but Utopia America.
All right, Ashton. So one last thing about shotguns, Tom. You mentioned before basically the 5 rounds of familiarization fire that's common. A couple of the older guys that I'm friends with here locally that are now long retired from law enforcement, when I talked to them about that type of thing, they said, well, hell, everybody knows how to run a shotgun. Do you think that has something to do with it on a larger scale? Is that, the time frame was different and life was different then?
Yeah, absolutely. If you grew up in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, you had been on a shotgun as a child. When I was 10 years old, half of the American population had a hunting license. 50% of the U.S. population had a hunting license. Now it's like 8%. As the population flipped over from majority rural to majority urban during the Reagan administration. It's a fairly recent thing. And prior to that, most male children wound up shooting a shotgun during their formative years and at least had some familiarity with it. Now we get people in police academies who've never seen any sort of firearm in person, much less grew up 10, 12, 14 years old shooting a shotgun. So they have absolutely no familiarity with the gun whatsoever. The guys you're talking to, probably born in the 40s, early 50s, hunted with uncles and dads and whatnot, and had at least mechanical familiarity. They may not have tactical training with it, but had mechanical familiarity with the shotgun. Whereas we get people today that that's just a foreign idea. That they grew up in the city, mostly raised by moms, and have never seen a shotgun in person, much less been out and handled one. So it's that we've lost that institutional memory of how to run one. It's a completely foreign gun to most people today.
Well, I think it's exactly what you said specifically about the time and era in our country, because I remember when I was in 8th grade, the first time I heard "A Country Boy Can Survive" by Bo Cephas, and to you non-country folks, that's Hank Williams Jr. And "A Country Boy Can't Survive," he said, because we're them old boys raised on shotguns, and it was a different time in the country. And so, yes, I agree with that 100%. Ashton, you want to grab the question from
I got it. Tom, Tim Reedy asked, what are some of the most common class safety violations you see, and what are your thoughts on heading them off before they happen?
Probably the two serious safety violations we see more than anything else are people unfamiliar with a semi-automatic handgun will turn it sideways to run the slide, which of course points it to everybody to their left if they're right-handed. You have to kind of watch out for that initially, make sure they keep the weapons pointed into the backstop when they're working the slide. The other thing is trigger creep, which you see that with every weapon system, period. People are at the ready, trigger fingers in register, and then it comes down, touches the trigger, goes back to register, comes down, touches the trigger, goes back to register. See that a lot. That's a horribly bad habit, and we have to work pretty early on to stop that. One of the things I just harp on with new instructors when we're training them is the same thing we tell rookie cops is you've got to learn to watch people's hands. Whether you're talking about a bad guy or a student on the line, they're not going to hurt you, they're not going to hurt each other, and they're not going to hurt themselves without involving their hands. So you got to learn to watch their hands. If you start doing that, then you start seeing the muzzle migrating to the side instead of straight forward. You're seeing the trigger finger come down and reassuring them that the trigger's still there, the trigger finger didn't steal it, and that sort of thing. And if you watch for those, you'll start seeing them more. And if you see them early on and correct them early on, then it ceases to be a problem. But if you don't learn to watch people's hands, you don't see either of those two problems until suddenly you hear a loud noise and then have to try to figure out why that happened. I would much rather keep it from happening than figure out why it happened.
Cool. So we got a question from Pascal.
It's Mike Green's wife.
Yes, yeah, Green. First off, she said for Tom to please tell Lynn hi. And she wanted to know if you have noticed an increase in women attending your classes.
Yes and no. It kind of comes and goes. Depends to some degree on geography, I think. When we ran the fixed facility school all those years, we trained 46,000 students there over an 18-year period, and 43% of them were female, which half the population is female. So that's getting pretty close to parity there. On the road shows, we don't see that percentage. It's very unusual for me to have a class with no females, but it's also unusual to have a class with half females. We typically, in a 20-person class, we might have 3, 4, maybe 5 women involved. I'm not sure how to change that. My wife is, she's been involved in training for 15 years, and she's adamantly opposed to lady-only classes. She thinks women ought to jump in there and like she had to, and just get after it. But since we don't offer women's only classes, that may be why we're seeing fewer women than some other trainers do. But I'd like I said, it would be really unusual for us to have no females, but we don't typically have half a class either, which demographically should be, since half the people in the world are female.
So I want to kind of change gears on what we've been talking about, because you have so much to offer, and I want to get some of this stuff out of you. So especially nowadays when we have, politicians or whoever telling us that, how we don't need to have firearms for self-defense and stuff like that. We always hear about how rare it is that you would ever need a firearm to defend yourself or need to use the threat of lethal force or lethal force, because, it's more likely you're going to get struck by lightning than to need that. So, all of us here have been lucky enough to, hear all the stats that you have on that. Can you kind of go over for our listeners kind of how lopsided that thinking is?
Yeah. A lot of it just stems from misinformation. The media is constantly telling you the violent crime is down and that sort of thing, which it's not. They base that entirely on the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Report, which comes out every year. People are under the mistaken notion that police agencies in this country have to report crimes to the FBI. They do not. It's an entirely voluntary system. So actually, many departments don't report crimes to the FBI at all, for 2 different reasons. First, you have to remember there are approximately 10,000 police departments at the local, county, state, and federal level. There are about 10,000 separate law enforcement agencies in the U.S., currently employing 900,000 officers. But when people think of police, they tend to think of big cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, or whatnot, with tens of thousands of police officers. The reality is the average cop in the U.S. works for a department of less than 10 people. And, every small town's got a police department. It may consist of 3 people. None of them have the budget or the manpower to have somebody who doesn't do anything but handle statistical reporting that's not mandated by law. So very few of those locales report crime to the FBI. Some of the major cities don't, because again, it's a purely voluntary system, because they don't like the public to know exactly how bad their crime stats are, Chicago being one of them. So when you look at the annual UCR report, it's grossly underreported. It's probably not even half of the violent crime that occurs in the U.S. But the media, because it's the FBI, UCR uses that as the barometer and says, violent crime's down 2% or 1% or whatever. One year they actually said it was down 10%. So I said, okay, I'll take one round out of every one of my magazines then. But that's not how it works. That's actually not the case at all. The Bureau of Justice Statistics is a separate part of the U.S. Justice Department. It's not part of the FBI. And according to them, there are about 6 million violent interpersonal crimes each year in the U.S. There's only 5 crimes. We're not talking about economic crime. We're not talking about drugs. We're just talking about violent interpersonal crime. They say there are about 6 million a year. Well, there are 320 million people in the country, so that's 1 for every 54 people. Not 1 in millions, not 1 in thousands, 1 for every 54 people. When you take children out, it's 1 for every 30 adults. So I kind of laugh when somebody says odds of my needing a gun are 1 in a million. No, they're actually 1 in a couple dozen in a given year. And again, that's just in a year. The Justice Department says your lifetime odds of being involved in a violent crime are about 1 in 4. So that's a long way from 1 in a million. You mentioned lightning. On average, 51 people a year die in the U.S. from lightning strikes. That's rare. But there were 12,500 roughly reported homicides in the U.S. last year. Bear in mind that homicides are extremely rare nowadays, not because people aren't trying to kill each other, but because of modern trauma care. Almost nobody dies from injuries they would routinely die of 50 years ago. And Memphis, for instance, has one of the best trauma centers in the U.S. because they get a lot of practice. We moved away from there in 2014, so I don't keep up with it anymore. But 2013 was the last year I bothered to check. In that year, the med there, the trauma center, treated 3,100 people for gunshots, 3,100 people for gunshots. Just at that one hospital. There are 20 hospitals in the metropolitan area. The med gets most of the gunshots, but they don't get all of them by any means, but they get most of them, and they got 3,100 of them. But they lost less than 100 of those people that were presented alive. If you're presented with vital signs, the odds of you dying from those injuries are less than 1 in 100. So that doesn't mean people weren't trying to kill each other. It means the med saves them, keeps them from dying. And that's why the homicide rate is what it is. The other reason is because an awful lot of people are simply properly disposed of. If you check in with people who study missing persons for a living, it's a lot harder to voluntarily disappear now than it was, say, 50 years ago, when you could go dig up a microfilm birth certificate of somebody who was born about the same time you were and died early in life, like in their first year. And you would take that and get a birth certificate, take that and get a driver's license. You could become somebody else. All of that's restricted now, and everything's computerized from state to state. Everybody's fingerprints are on file now. So it's pretty hard to voluntarily disappear now. The number of people who just disappear without a trace and are never found, simply vanish, is about 30,000 a year in the U.S. The majority of those are going to be, as I said, properly disposed of homicide victims. Here in Florida, where I live now, just right down the street from me, the I-4 corridor, littered with bodies continually. It's the I-4 corridor here, the I-10 corridor across Texas and Arizona, just constantly finding bodies of people being disposed of in medians and wooded areas and whatnot. A lot of times those people are not found, and they don't go in the homicide tally. So the true number of homicides in the U.S. is thought to be more like about 40,000 a year. which again would not be a 1 in a million chance by any stretch. But that's the least common of the violent crimes because, again, modern trauma care. In 2013 in Memphis, as I said, there were 3,100 people shot alone. That doesn't count people bludgeoned, stabbed, cut, whatever. In fact, in that year, there were 154 homicides in Memphis where somebody stayed dead. But there were over 9,100 aggravated assaults, over 9,000 aggravated assaults, which means somebody used a deadly weapon and caused great bodily harm to somebody. In other words, tried to kill them, but because of modern trauma care, they didn't die. So when you look at, don't look at the homicide tally, when you start looking at things like aggravated assault, in Memphis, you have a 1 in 80 chance of being involved in an aggravated assault each individual year. 1 in 80 is a long way from 1 in a million.
Right.
Can I pile on that real quick?
Yes, please,
The other
DB.
thing, too, that a lot of people don't realize is that law enforcement agencies, particularly bigger, very political, metropolitan places, it is not good for the politicians and the police executives to have a high crime rate. So it has been a smorgasbord of creative ways to change your reporting statistics. Some of my favorites are having a designated administrative person go back and report based on what the district attorney's office did with the case, not what was filed or arrested. So somebody who does 23 burglaries, pleads guilty to one count of grand theft and takes a 6-month county lid. All that stuff gets dismissed like it didn't happen. The horrendous things we used to call attempted murder will get, dispositioned as some sort of weird assault, and that's how they get reported. And then now with a lot of cities going to decriminalization, things that were always crimes are no longer crimes, and the officers aren't even taking reports on it. I mean, when the district attorney isn't going to file on a case where the theft is under $750, guess what the cops started doing? I mean, when I was working in downtown Dallas, they had officers not taking reports on straight up robbery. Strong arm robbery. It was using physical bodily force, but they're like, well, it was only involved in whatever, but they took that and kill. So we're just going to write this off. The DA will never prosecute, so it's stuff on you. So what we would normally see is I kind of learned this the other day too. The word swag that we all think is for free stuff at gun shows or trade shows. Swag is short. It's the police acronym for stolen without a gun. So all the swag robberies, where things are stolen without use of a firearm, a lot of those are now just written off as not even taking a report on it. So the public is getting really, really skewed as to what they're being fed as what the crime rates are. And they're usually the same exact people who are telling you don't need to find any need to protect yourself. The police will do it in 20 minutes when they get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
One
DB.
thing.
Sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Some years ago, pretty much across the board, American law enforcement went to what's called incident-based reporting. If 5 of you are sitting around the table, man walks in with a shotgun and robs all 5 of you. Under the law, that's 5 counts of armed robbery. That's 5 separate victims. That's 5 separate robberies. That'll be 1 report. So that in the stats, that's 1 robbery. It's actually 5. So if you want to drop the robbery rate overnight, you just go to incident-based reporting. And you just went from 5 robberies to 1. That's a huge reduction. And that's that sort of thing is where the illusion that violent crime is down comes from. It's all the way it's reported.
One thing that needs to be added into this conversation at this point is this notion of bail reform. And that's the notion that people who have been accused of a crime can't be held in jail on what's called a cash bond. Because the argument against it is that it disproportionately affects lower income people. And there may be some truth to that if you just go based on strictly on economic factors. But what's happening, if you look in New York City right now, where a person gets arrested, they get taken into the jail, they get processed, and they're immediately being released on a, basically a recognizance bond, which means you promised to show up in court. And they're turning
With a
people
gift
that have been
bag.
arrested.
You get a gift bag.
Yeah, there have been people that have been arrested for violent crimes, to be taken and processed, and they're being turned right back out onto the street. And
then
look,
arrested.
and look what's happening to the New York crime statistics. Just in the last month since this has been in practice up there, and that's something that is starting to sweep across the United States. We have this coming year district attorney's race here, and every district attorney in Georgia is up for re-election. One of the candidates in the judicial circuit while we're is pitching this idea of no cash bond. Okay, if you get arrested for a misdemeanor crime and you've lived here for 20 years and your mom and daddy live here and your brother and sister live just down the road, okay, I've got no problem turning you loose on the recognizance bond because I know where to find you come court date. But if you're a violent crime criminal with no ties to this community, am I supposed to just open up the door and let you right back out to prey on this community?
Amen. So, folks, real quick, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lee. Real quick, folks, I want to let you guys know what's going on for the rest of the show. We got 20 minutes left. Here's what's going on. I got one more question to contribute. We're going to go find out where everybody's going, what's going on. Alan will go to Rapid Fire 2.0 with Tom. After that, little spiel of where to find us, stuff like that. Come back. We're going to go over upcoming guests. We have final thoughts, and so stick with us, folks. We still got another 20 minutes. Real quick, Alan or Lee and I had a 2-hour conversation the other day, a couple weeks ago, and one of the topics that we covered specifically, the biggest hindrance I found for regular law-abiding citizens to take training is they have this belief, and Tom has already dismissed that belief by citing exactly how many police officers are out there these days, and then that's not even well trained, as DB and Marshal Chuck Haggard have repetitively told us on our 2-hour special we had after taking Tom's class and hearing the shriek from that woman getting murdered that didn't have the gun, her and her son, that traumatized me and Alan into making that broadcast. And what it is you folks have to realize, again, the reason why we added that into our spiel, remember, you and only you are responsible for your safety and protection of yourself and your loved ones, is like Marshal Chuck Haggard said on that. Number one, when they get the call, officers down, they're coming Mach 1, they don't ever make it on time. DB's point was, you don't know what kind of guy you're getting. Are you getting a guy like Tom, like Lee, like DB, who are shooters? Or are you going to get a guy who's sitting out in the car waiting till everything stops and takes the report? And lastly, what me and Lee were talking about, we're citing the different cases now that law enforcement is not required to protect and serve. There are plenty of officers who still do that, but legally they are not required. So what I'm trying to say to you folks is you have to understand that when I say gun rights and the right to self-protection, that means you are only responsible for your people, who's in your house, if you want to extend past that, your neighbors and things like that, but nobody else is going to come and save you. And I wanted to specifically address this with Tom because last week's episode, we were talking about the gift of fear, and I read some of the book's statistics in there, and it said 1 out of 4 men are abusers, 1 out of 4 women were victims of abuse, and like 1 out of 4 men these days are having some type of pedophile, inner family, something gross, disgusting thing. You need to take off the rose-colored glasses and realize there's real evil in the world. You're responsible, yes, when you accept that, you have a responsibility to learn to take care of your people and the people you love and care about. And that's why I want Tom to go over the realism of a potential, because people think, oh, I never did anything wrong to that person, they're not going to attack me. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't say anything bad. I didn't cut them off in traffic. I smiled at them, et cetera, et cetera. Sadistic people, you can smile, you can beg, you can cry. They will still hurt you because they are sick. Can you speak to that a little more, Tom? I know it was a lot, but I'm sick of people always thinking that they can just walk down the street and never be bothered because they didn't do anything wrong to anyone.
Yeah, everybody in our culture likes to think that violent crime only happens to somebody else. But to everybody else on the planet, who are you? You're somebody else. It all happens to somebody. With those 6 million violent crimes a year, each and every one of them had a victim. none of those victims got out of bed that morning saying, I bet today somebody's going to try to harm me. But sure enough, somebody did. I've had over 60 students involved in defensive gunplay. Not one of them got out of bed that morning thinking today's the day. They were going about their life. Every single one of those was just going about his life, doing his normal thing. Some of them were in their driveway or in their garage. Some of them were at the store. Some of them were at this place or that, their place of business, gas station. And, you don't get to decide which day. Somebody else makes that decision, and they'll typically only inform you at the last moment.
All right. Well said and amen, Tom. Go ahead, DB.
Quick, Baraka.
Yeah, please speak up, brother. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to talk loud because I guess nobody can hear me.
Yes.
Fix that next time. The reality is, I tell people all the time, and my wife loves this quote, is that this is like, you do not want to be the wounded baby gazelle at the watering hole. We live in a world of dangerous predatory hyena animals. Many will attack in packs. They are looking for weakness. And that's all it is. You are food, as Tom, one of my favorite Tom quotes is, they're just trying to get paid. And many are just trying to eat. And you are food. That is all they look at you. And the happier you are to see them, the little smiles, the passive, if I'm passive, they'll be passive. You're passive, you are setting yourself up to be food. And it's that simple for these people. They are not like you. And if you look at me, I do not look like food. Anybody who's ever been around me, my physical build and appearance. In the short time I worked downtown, in just a couple of years, I had 3 attempted robberies performed against me. How did I get selected? That's what it's called desperation. And and drug addiction, where they can't, where it gets a little foggy that it's not a wounded baby gazelle. If they're targeting somebody who looks like me for food, trust me, smiling at them is not going to help you. Yeah. And
you can do a lot of things to increase your odds of being deselected, but it's certainly not guaranteed. People tried to stick me up 2 different occasions. You can do everything right and still find yourself in a bad place.
Lee, Ashton, you guys want to chime in on that before we go to where we can find everybody and get to rapid fire?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for all 3 of these guys, for Lee, Daryl, and Tom. These guys have all been law enforcement for a long time. How many times did you get there in time? So, Lee, I'll start with you. How many times did you get there in time when you caught a call that there was something horrible going on, that you got there in time to stop it while you were on duty in a uniform?
Ooh, I can count them on one hand in 21 years.
Wow.
Daryl, how about you? Daryl can't hear me. Somebody ask Daryl.
Daryl, he said, in your total law enforcement career, how many times when you got the call that they needed Superman, did you get there in time to help in your whole entire career? Lee said it was a few, he can count on one hand in 21 years.
It's real rare. The only thing, and most agencies don't have this, some of the best work I did was in a helicopter. Because you know what? That was the very few times that somebody's calling and screaming into the phone and we're at least overhead. But that ain't going to save you. It just means we can get the officers to you faster. Most places don't have access to aviation. So yeah, it was few and far between. The best ways of, we saw a lot of tragedy out there, and all of it was minutes after we needed to be there.
How about you, Tom? How many times did you get there in time?
That was a long time ago. Off the top of my head, I can think of 2. And one of them was sheer accident. That partner and I were driving down a residential street, lights off, low speed, windows down, and a woman stuck her head out of a second floor window and said, he's going out the back. We had no idea who she's talking about, but we got out and started running that way, and sure enough, called a burglar. But just sheer accident. We just happened to be in front of the house. She didn't call the police. She stuck her head out the window and hollered, hey, man, what are the odds of us being there at that moment? That's extremely rare.
I've asked this question to a bunch of different law enforcement guys at various different levels, municipal, county, state, federal, and the answer is almost always the same. Once, twice, handful. Nobody's going to get there in time. You are your own rescue. You're all you got.
Yes. Last time I checked, nationally, the average response time for a priority 1 call was about 11 minutes. Average encounter with the criminals over in about 1 minute. So you do the math.
Amen. All right. Well, that's exactly that was perfect, Ashton. I really feel like that will stick with people. That will get them to understand, and you formulated that perfect. So thank you so much. So we'll start off with you, Ashton. Where can people get a hold of you? What do you got coming up class-wise? And go ahead, man. The floor is yours, brother.
Website's 360performanceshooting.com. Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's 360performs. Upcoming events, I'm presenting along with Lee and Daryl at TACCon here in March down in Texas. Can't wait to get to see you guys in real space again. In April, I've got Shotgun Essentials with Civilian Carry Radio. So Alan and Baraka are going to be there. This is a chance for folks to come out and shoot with them. And Tim Chandler and I are going to be laying down some of the Gospel of Gage in Northern Virginia, near Purcellville, Virginia. It's a 1-day class. It's suitable for just about anybody. As long as you know which end of the shotgun's which, we can get you going and get you shooting and get you moving down the road. And if you're experienced already, well, guess what? We can coach you up and get you moving a little faster than you are right now. So after that, Performance Shotgun in Pennsylvania. And I've got a bunch of stuff on my website, Indiana, all over the country. So that's what we got going on.
All right, perfect. Thank you, brother. DB, what do you got going on? Where can people get a hold of you? Go ahead, brother.
Best bet is DB Shooting Adventures on Facebook. My child swears if he's going to start fixing my Instagram. Our website is still not functional. I still need to talk to Tiffany. The reality, my partner is quite busy on a real job right now. I'm kind of baffled of where I'm going in the industry. I am teaching 3 classes at TACCon. I'll be out at John Murphy's place, FPF, in June. And teaching at Primary and Secondary Summit, I believe that's September. So doing a couple of things. I am trying to put a couple things together right now with Chuck Haggard and Cecil Birch doing snub jump. Yeah, that's kind of our thing, is little revolver. So yeah, that's it. I had dinner tonight with Caleb Causey. We'll do a counter robbery in the summer, because that'll be fun. The summer in Dallas, we'll do a counter robbery and probably follow that up the next day with a shotgun class. So, and then we always do revolver roundup. We're looking at November this year. We haven't posted it yet. We're looking like it's going to be the last. It's going to be the weekend before Thanksgiving. This year's instructors are going to be myself and Wayne Dobbs as usual, Chuck Haggard, and Greg Ellifritz. So it'll be for Greg first year teaching with us for Revolver Roundup. And we're doing those are all 2 day. It's 2 days, 4 instructors, and it'll be all stuff.
Nice, brother. Thank you. Lee Weems, what do you got going on? Where can people get a hold of you, brother?
Webpage is firstpersonsafety.com, and then First Person Safety on Facebook and Instagram. March 14th and 15th, I will be, wherever that weekend is, I will be in McLeod, Oklahoma at the Mead Hall Range for my Applied Pistol Craft class, which is my 2-day traveling roadshow. And then I'll be doing the Applied Pistol Craft in Crum, Texas, the middle weekend in May. I think that's the 16th and 17th. I've got a few students already signed up for each of those classes, but the more the merrier. I need Brahms ice cream in my life, so I need a reason to go to Oklahoma. So we need to make that happen. Obviously, I'll be at TACCon coming up in March. And then I've got stuff going locally on the first Saturday of each month from now through May here in Georgia.
Fantastic. And Tom, what do you got going on? Where can people get a hold of you?
The website's really simple, rangemaster.com. Pretty simple. Information on all our classes in there. I'm not going to get into the classes. We do about 35 road shows a year, so literally all over the country. We got TACCON coming up next month. Not plugging that. It sold out last November, as it does every year. We'll be announcing the 2021 version in April. So if you are interested in attending that, you need to get into that pretty early. It sells out by late October every single year for the next year. A quick word from our sponsor. Finally got this into print. Concealed carry. Gun Digest Books just came out with this not long ago. You can get that at Gun Digest store online, or you can go to Amazon. Amazon has both the paperback and the Kindle version of it available now for immediate delivery. So if you want a copy of that, it's available now. If you don't care if my family's cold and hungry this winter, don't buy one.
Hey Tom, if it helps, Melanie is in bed right now reading it, and I'm not making that up, seriously.
That's awesome.
She is in her jammies, cuddled up with her concealed carry class book, so it's all good.
Good deal.
Alan, it's outside of you and I headed to TACCON in March for the first time, get our cherries popped. What do you got going on? You got any IDPA matches? Anything else going on, bro?
No, I'm looking into a new one because mine's taking a break for the winter months, although it's been like summer around, or spring at least around here. So I think we got another one close by, well, hour and a half away. But yep, other than that, nope, not yet.
Yeah, we're in the throes of winter here. It was only 81 today.
Wow.
All right, Alan, 2.0, hit him up.
So you have, first time you were on, we had a rapid fire deal going on. So we got rapid fire 2.0, same deal as last time, short answers to these questions. And again, the answer to these questions are what you prefer for yourself, not necessarily what you recommend for somebody else.
Okay.
So first question, is competition a good augment to defensive training?
Yes.
Least favorite skill to practice?
Oh, geez. Probably reloads.
Biggest training myth?
That you can't use your sights under stress.
Striker fire, double action, or single action only?
Couldn't care less.
Appendix or strong side hit?
Strong side, not because of the perceived safety issue, but because nobody can wear the gun that way all the time. Guys that go to the range and do all their work from appendix and then put on a suit coat or a sport coat, move the gun behind their hip, are setting themselves up for big problems. So the whole idea of repetitive training is to ingrain a response without having to think about it. I think that's an issue. I wear my gun at about 330 or 4 on the belt, under a t-shirt, under a fishing shirt, under a suit, under a tux. Doesn't make any difference what I got on. Same place. So my hand knows where to reach for it. If we had more time, I could tell you horror stories about people that reached for the wrong place, because that's where they always reach for the gun in training and in practice, and reach for the wrong gun under stress. It needs to be where your hand knows it is.
That just means we have to have you back on soon. That's all I mean.
In the home, pistol, rifle, or shotgun?
Yes.
One thing you carry every day other than your gun?
A knife, a blade.
Red dot or iron?
Not to fight with. Got stuff with.
For sure. A red dot or irons on a pistol?
I think I see a lot of red dots in class nowadays. I think the advantage of them is probably overstated by people who really like them from a real practical standpoint. They do make hitting at 20, 25 yards easier, but until you put in a lot of time, you have to put in the work. If you don't put in the work, you tend to slow people down up close. And yes, I'm aware that you can use them very quickly up close, but you have to put in the time to do that.
No, it does take work.
So it does. So I'm not sold on them as the everyday. On carbine, yeah. On pistol, man, maybe not.
Gotcha. 3 books that you recommend that are must read?
Well, the first would be Principles of Personal Defense, Jeff Cooper. I'm sitting there, yeah, you would ambush me with that. I'm sitting there looking at a bookshelf, a little over 300 books sitting in front of me.
Concealed Carry Class by Tom Gibbons.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
That's kind of my favorite. Oh, geez, I don't know. If I turn my camera around, you would see over 300 books against one entire wall of my office is
Wow,
bookshelves. So
that's beautiful.
kind of hard to say. There are so many there that are important. I'd hate to narrow it down to 3.
Gotcha. We always ask this question. I always think to myself whenever we ask, I'm like, I can't even name 3 books that I have. I mean, I don't even know them. When I'm reading them, I don't even know the names of them most of the time. But please recommend one peer, teacher, trainer, coach, or instructor. Nobody on the panel today.
Again, it goes back to context. What are you looking for? If you're looking for managing unknown contacts and integrated hand, blade, and gun skills, go to Craig Douglas, South Narc. If you want to know about the psychology of criminals, how they develop, how they think, how they operate, and how they will likely react with you, that would be William April. You want to go to Shotgun, go to Matt Hott or DB there. It depends on what you're looking for, but those would be the recommendations that are somewhat niche that come to mind immediately.
Sure. Cool.
All right, folks, listen, please hang on for 5 more minutes. We got still our announcements, who's coming up next, and final thoughts. I just got to do our spiel here. Folks who have inquired about our CCR t-shirts, as Alan is modeling there, we're currently doing a pre-order. T-shirts are $20 each. Big boy sizes 2XL or more at $5. Send a link to our PayPal link, paypal.me/CC Radio. In the notes section, please include your size and address. In stock currently right now, we have 1 small, 2 mediums, 4 larges, and 6 extra larges. To become a corporate sponsor or to advertise on the show, please send me an email to baraka3@gmail.com for details. Please share, subscribe, or leave your feedback at the commenting of the YouTube video or on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, please hit the alert bell icon to get notifications when we go live. Please give us a thumbs up. That'll help trigger the algorithm so we get more views and more shares. And share this if you appreciate this information and you needed to get it out. Thank you. Our website is on Firearms Radio Network. Just go to Google and type in CCR or Civilian Carry Radio. You will get our full notes. Our notes are truncated on YouTube because of the character count. The full notes with all of our links are there. Please, we encourage you to go, again, Google and look for Civilian Carry Radio to get our full show notes for tonight's episode. On Twitter, we're CC_Radio2A. On Instagram, we're CC_Radio2A. On Facebook, our page is CC Radio 2A. We have also in the notes 9 out of the 137 audio podcasting stations that play our show are listed below. The top 9 that are the most popular are iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, OnSpeaker, Player FM. Please also check for our industry partners and their discounts. Eridus Industries, ATI Guns, Battle Comp, Big Tex Outdoors, Dark Angel Medical, Dark Star Gear Holsters, Fire Clean, and Trident Concepts. Please join us next Wednesday, February 12th at 8 p.m. For our 131st episode featuring, we're bringing back Mike Pannone, USMC Recon, Army SF Green Beret, and he is a Delta Commando of CTT Solutions. Behind that, we've got Derek Blanc, owner of Kids Safety Act Education, 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to kids' firearm safety and accident prevention. Behind that, we have Eric Packheiser of QSI Training. Behind that, we have Paul Carson, owner of Safety Solutions. And behind that, we have Chad Lyman of Code for Combat. As always, we invite you to please check out DC Project Rally for Gun Rights. The website is www.dcproject.info. Tatiana is the main representative, and we encourage you to go and support those ladies in their mission. As earlier announced by Ashton, we have Shotgun Essentials with Civilian Carry Radio, hosted by 360 Performance Shooting with Ashton Ray and 10 Chandler. Link is in our show notes. It's Saturday, April 4th from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. in a private range in Berryville. It's $200. Please come out and join us, and we would love to shoot with you. So, 2 final thoughts, Alan, Sams.
Last week's show elicited a lot of response, especially from some female listeners, and what I'm about to say kind of goes for everybody, but especially to some of the female listeners and people that have had these really bad things happen in their life. I'm not pushing religion on anybody. I do happen to be a Christian, so it's easier for me to believe this believe like I do. But if you don't, or you believe in karma or whatever, but guys, I don't think bad stuff doesn't happen for no reason. And what I mean by that is some of the people that have responded to us, when you go through these things and you make it through the other side, even if you're still working on getting over these things, I really believe this stuff, you go through this stuff sometimes things are allowed to happen because you were strong enough to go through it, and you got a plan is set forth so you can help other people. So I think sometimes people have a hard time grasping, the whys and things, and it's kind of comforting for me when bad stuff happens and I get to the other side of it. Now it's your job to help other people get by that. It's a good way for me to deal with that, and I just wanted to throw that out because we've had some conversations with some people after that show last week, and that really is a heartfelt belief of mine, and I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for some people to think on, and instead of looking at it as just 100% negative, look at some of these bad things that go on in our lives as that tempering of steel and fire, and then what you can do with that newfound strength on the other side to help other people and affect more people that you come into contact with.
Well said, brother. Well said. DB, final thoughts, brother.
I'm going to make this real easy and probably a little controversial because that's me. I want to reiterate that Tom has been doing this for something like 45 years. That's 4.5 decades of experience. You owe it to yourself if you ever consider yourself a true instructor, not a PowerPoint reader, firearms target grader. You want to be an instructor, you need to go to source information, and after 4+ decades, Tom is source information. He is one of the few 40-decade instructors out there still teaching. Don't regret later that you didn't go do something with Tom to figure out where this stuff came from. None of this was invented. I've become as I got older, I've become quite the historian of this stuff. None of this is new. It comes around over and over and over again, and the same people nobody listened to in their own era became our go-tos later when we figured out they were right, but they were in a very, very minor niche. We have greater access now to some of the greatest trainers who have ever walked this planet. We will never see guys out there with a level of experience with violence still alive as your 30 and 40-year decade guys, because cops don't get to do what they used to do to gain that experience domestically. If you have an opportunity to train with guys like Tom, don't wish someday you had done it and, avoided it because it's not the coolest, hottest, whatever thing to do. Tom is one of my absolute heroes, a mentor, and somebody I look up to. And I've been doing this for 3 decades now as a real instructor. And this stuff will go away if you don't go suck it up as best as you can now. And so I highly recommend anything Rangemasters involved in. I fully endorse, and I hope that people get access to Tom firsthand as long as they possibly can.
Well said and amen, brother. Lee Weems, final thoughts, brother.
To echo what DB was saying there, I discovered the open enrollment training world, kind of, really dove into it in 2014. And I had just finished reading the Louis Howard book when Louis died. I'd never got the opportunity to train with him. And Jim Cirillo died not too long after I found out who Jim Cirillo was. And, one of the things I love to play on the young cops is, and the old guys all know what I'm going to do, is I'll walk up to a rookie and I'll ask them who Jim Cirillo is. And when they don't know, the next day they have to report back to me with at least a page worth of information on Jim Cirillo. And right now I got 2 guys trying to figure out who Bill Allred is. Bill Allard. And, try to figure out who he is. And, Tom, your primary source of information. I very much appreciate you having taken me under your wing personally, you and Lynn, and invited me into the Rangemaster family, and especially my fellow siblings, the kids that we have our weekends. And folks, if you've never been with Tom to find good brisket in a barbecue joint that shares a building with a transmission repair shop and a and a hair salon, and you just missed out. And meeting him at high noon on the streets of Deadwood so we can go see where Bill Hickok got killed. That's just the kind of fun things we get to do together. And I just very much appreciate you including me in the Rangemaster family. And even more so than that, the influence that you spread amongst my agency and my people. I feel better about my deputies walking on the street because of the Rangemaster influence, and all of our instructors are also Rangemaster guys, and so that's recognized here. And thank you from me, and thank you from Sheriff Barry.
Thanks to both of you.
Ashton Ray, final thoughts, brother.
Well, I have to echo the same thing that DB and Lee were talking about. I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am right now, wherever that is, without Tom's influence and mentorship, and all the stuff that he and Lynn have done for me over the years. The first day I met Tom, I walked up to Skip Gokenauer and said, "Hi, Mr. Gibbons. Nice to meet you." I didn't even know what Tom looked like. So, of course, I picked the wrong guy. But they were both in the picture on the website, or the Rangemaster website at the time. We kind of come a long way from there since that day back in 2000 whatever. But I have to echo the same thing as what these two fellas said. I can't thank you and Lynn enough for all the opportunities you've given me. And if you don't train with Tom Gibbons, you're wrong.
There, he said it. Well, Tom, we go to you last, so you got to just bear with me. We always give the guests the honor of the last and final word on our show. I just want to thank you guys. Over this last 3 years, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Again, I just can't reiterate it to you all, of doing this show. And I have to echo off of what Alan said, and also with one of our awesome, who's come a regular and a part of our community, who's always here every week, and we appreciate her so much, Erica Brown, who's in our live chat. She said, for some people, healing can come from helping others. And I just wanted to elaborate a little further on that point. I went through a lot of tragic situations when I was a child, and I thank God for those. It's just like Alan, I'm a Christian. I don't impose my beliefs on anyone else, but I'm a Catholic. I'm a very much believe in God. I've always felt his presence. I've been lucky in that situation. And I really feel that everything that I went through made me stronger and a better person, because what it did was every tragic and hard situation I ever dealt with, if God asked me right now, I would do it 10 times over to spare other people from going it. And not only that, but to be able to give them the wisdom that I gained from it and the strength to say that I made it through, you can too. And that's why I do this show. That's why I go around and I say the things I do, because the world is full of predators, negative people. And I'm sick and tired of people being taken advantage of, good people, by predatorial types. And I want to do as much as I can to give back, to uplift other people, to give them life-saving information, and hence why we do this show. It's a very, very emotional and important thing to me. And I appreciate all of our guest co-hosts, because I'm sick and tired of good people being taken advantage of. And we need to unite more as a people and help each other out, look out for each other, put the egos aside, the negativity aside, and reach out and uplift. People are not going to remember you by what you have. They're going to remember by how many people you helped and how many people you reached out and uplifted. And that's, I'll pass the mic and the last final thought to Tom.
Well, first thing is Daryl, Lee, Ashton, thank you for those kind words. We try really hard. As I said, my main thrust over the last few years has been trying to mentor younger guys like you to take over and carry the torch when I'm too feeble to do this, which is rapidly approaching. And to echo what Baraka said, if you're any good at this, this is not a job. This is a calling. I'm here to help other people stay safe in an increasingly hazardous world. Last thing I would say is we're in the golden age of firearms training. Tactical firearms training today is worlds away from where it was 20, 25 years ago. I could sit here and probably name off 20 or 25 fully competent firearms instructors all over the country, Rock mentioned a few in the comments a little bit about Paul Carson, South Narc, Chuck Haggard. I could go on and on and on. These guys, John Murphy, these guys are scattered all over the country. Whether you're going to train with me or you're going to train with one of these other guys is not nearly as important to me as you just get out and get some training. People who have had no formal training don't know what they don't know. You have no idea what's involved in this that you probably haven't even thought about. A little bit of competent training could make literally the difference between life and death for you or a loved one. So whether you train with me or not, get out and get some training. Obviously we'd like to see you in class, but there's a lot of other options. If for some reason you can't get to us, get to somebody else, but get off your ass and do something before it's too late. Don't let your dying thought be, I wish I'd gotten around to that. You have some say in your life, but you have to do something. You have to take part in it. You have to be an active participant in your own salvation.
Well said and deep. That gave me chills. Thank you, Tom. Folks, in the words of our good friend and mentor, Tom's wife, Lynn Gibbons, I do not carry a pistol so I can impose my will on someone else. I carry a pistol so someone cannot impose their will on me. That's quote number one. And then number two is one of Tom's students, Tim Reddy. For me, and what I encourage people to do, if they are going to carry as an act of love. It is not because of fear or hate or anger, but we carry because we love life, we love our families, and that is something worth protecting by Mr. Tim Reedy. Folks, I'd like to say good night to you all. Please take care, stay safe, be positive, remain vigilant. We'll see you all next week. We thank you for your time, and thank you for being here and your continued support. God bless you, and good night. Thank you. And we're off air, folks. You guys killed it.